In the news tonight, Bulitavu hails court ruling. Council advises against exaggeration of USP ranking. And ministry at advanced planning stage for vaccinating children.
From the studios of FBC Suva, Edwin Nana.
Fiji. Sodelpa MP Mosesim Bulitavu will retain his seat in Parliament after a court action calling for the immediate vacation of his seat was thrown out by the Court of Disputed Returns today. Bulitavu was taken to court by Sodelpa leader William Ngavoka for alleged breach of party directives when he spoke in support of the 2021-2022 national budget and Bill 17 in Parliament. The court today has also said that the internal memo from the party president and general secretary to the leader of the opposition on how to vote on Bill 17 was not dated. Eleanor Turangaivu reports.
The Court of Disputed Returns this morning ruled that there was insufficient evidence provided by the plaintiff, William Ngavoka, that the defendant, Mosesim Bulitavu, voted in support of the budget and Bill 17 or abstained from voting, allowing for Bulitavu to retain his parliamentary seat. The court noted that no minutes of the Sodelpa Management Board meeting was led in evidence to show that they passed a resolution for its parliamentary members to vote against the budget and Bill 17. Chief Justice Kamal Kumar also ruled that no evidence had been led to establish that the party leader and parliamentary leader communicated in writing any directive by the management board to its members of parliament to vote against the bill and the budget or to abstain from voting. The Chief Justice also ruling that there was no email produced in evidence to prove that an internal memo was emailed to the leader of opposition and Sodelpa parliamentary members.
Next for me, probably will continue, given the still have my seat in Parliament, and I continue my work as a member of Parliament, and also towards next year's 2022 general elections.
Justice Kamal Kumar stated the mere fact that the defendant spoke in support of the budget and Bill 17 does not mean he voted in support or abstained, adding there is no provision in the Constitution that allows for a member of Parliament's seat to be vacated if they speak in support of or against a motion before Parliament. Furthermore, the court is of the view that the reason the internal memo was not dated is that it was issued after the defendant made his statement in Parliament on July 26th. Bulitavu's lawyer Sushil Sharma says this is the first time in the history of Lambasa courts to have a Court of Disputed Returns hearing.
I'm very happy with the ruling and I'm excited about it. I think this is one of the benchmark ruling Fiji will have, and probably I'm very proud that I'm the only legal practitioner from Lambasa that was engaged in this kind of proceedings under section 63, 64, 65, 66 for the Court of Disputed Returns.
Each party will bear their own costs of the proceedings. Eleanor Turangaivu, FBC News.
The University of the South Pacific has been told to be careful about how it markets its ranking by the Times Higher Education. USP has been touting itself as part of the top 10% of universities in the world, but the Consumer Council of Fiji says it should exercise greater diligence when making such statements. The consumer watchdog says USP's claim is misleading and overstretched at best.
Any organization which charges consumers for its products and services by making such claims are actually engaging in unethical practices, because making such claims like unsubstantiated claims of exclusivity.
The story is a great story to be celebrated. It's an achievement, and yet it's been exaggerated, it's been misrepresented, and it's in the end it's been divisive about who's actually contributed to it.
Even Times Higher Education, which conducted the survey, says USP's interpretation is over-generous and it should be cautious with its marketing of the ranking.
USP, like any other business, must and should always adhere to the principles of good governance when engaging in any marketing practices to ensure that they do not infringe the consumer rights to correct and accurate information.
There are also concerns over how USP has only credited a handful of senior staff for the ranking.
All 14 of them were men. Not a single woman was identified, and yet we have some outstanding female researchers in the university. And not one of them was a regional member of staff.
Acting Deputy Vice-Chancellor Education, Professor Chito Vanualailai, says based on 20,000 universities globally, the USP position is that the ranking would have the university in the top 10%. The Ministry of Health is in the advanced planning stage to vaccinate children under 18 years. Permanent Secretary for Health, Dr. James Fong, says they will begin with children between the ages of 16 and 18. This will involve a stringent process to ensure that parental or guardian consent is secured and online registration is encouraged before vaccination. Kritika Kumar reports.
The Permanent Secretary says the required number of vials of the vaccine has been put aside.
There's initial indication that we probably will be able to vaccinate the 16 and the 18s, up 16 to 18 age group. I'm just trying to sort out a consent process for that.
He adds more stock is expected to continue the vaccination of eligible children less than 18 years old.
There's ongoing negotiations for more supplies for that purpose, but we even looking at supplies that will go to the younger age groups.
The Permanent Secretary says any decision on the opening of schools will be contingent on how well this vaccination phase rolls out. Education Minister Premila Kumar says they are working closely with the Ministry of Health.
We need to plan the opening of schools in a COVID-safe environment.
According to the ministry, 96.8% of the target population have received at least one dose and 54.6% are now fully vaccinated. Kritika Kumar, FBC News.
Movement restrictions at the Namara Tiri settlement in Lambasa have been lifted. FBC News understands the lifting of the restriction comes after no new COVID-19 cases were recorded in the settlement during the 14-day lockdown. Eleanor Turangaivu has more.
After 14 days of being confined to their homes, these families of Namara Tiri settlement outside Lambasa are relieved to be out of lockdown.
I'm happy. Today we release with all of myself and my family.
Now we are happy. We are happy. We are free. Long time is well lockdown.
Residents say police removed tapes from their homes around 6 a.m. and they were informed the restriction has been lifted.
During the lockdown, we just stayed home. We couldn't move around much and was just within our compound.
During the lockdown period, the 17 homes in the settlement were provided household packs containing food supplies, sanitary products and vegetables by government.
We feel good now. We are free to go to work. Because majority of the people staying are working, and they are earning from their work, no extra activities, anything like that.
The settlement was placed on lockdown after 3 of its residents tested positive for COVID-19 last month. They remain under observation and assessment. Eleanor Turangaivu, FBC News.
And to tonight's COVID-19 update, Fiji recorded 178 new COVID-19 infections for the period ending 8 a.m. yesterday. 87 cases are from the West, 90 from the Central Division, and a case each from the Eastern and Northern Division. There are 5 new COVID-19 deaths to report. Fiji has recorded 48,502 cases since April this year. There are now 13,362 active cases with 34,318 recoveries in total. The COVID-19 death toll stands at 533. The vaccination campaign also continues. 567,751 people, or 96.8% of the adults in Fiji, have received their first dose of the vaccine, and 320,520 people, or 54.6%, have been fully vaccinated. The 5 most vaccinated areas are Mba, Rewa, Nanranga and Naitasiri, which have achieved 100% first jab administered, and next is Nandi. And Alipate Valemai of Suva is fully vaccinated. Have you got your jabs yet? Up ahead, COVID-19 pandemic will have long-term impact on education, and illegally harvested sea cucumber confiscated. Welcome back. Education is one sector that will see long-term impacts of the pandemic, says Senior Economics Officer at the Asian Development Bank. Isoa Wainingolo says while research on the impacts of COVID-19 is ongoing, previous crises have shown that education levels are always affected by such events. Ritika Pratap reports.
Sudden lockdowns and restrictions on movement to contain the virus have meant no school for children.
Studies have shown that when education are interrupted, it affects student concentration and also student development.
Schools across Fiji closed in April, but as the crisis evolves, stakeholders have come up with plans to ensure students don't lose concentration.
Glad that now the ministry is giving out worksheets, so that helps to keep the students learning, continue the process, even though it's from a different environment, but it still helps compared to doing nothing at all during this period.
Obviously, we can have online, online classes are going on and the printed resource materials are being delivered. But in terms of conducting an exam, again, what options are there to assess the children? Not necessarily that we should be having a full 100% exam-oriented assessment. We can also have other forms of assessment.
A number of options are being considered by the Education Ministry to reopen schools safely, one of which includes vaccinating our young population. Ritika Pratap, FBC News.
The Health Minister has condemned an article titled "Hesitant Fijians Tell Why They Won't Get Vaccinated Against COVID-19, published by Radio New Zealand on Sunday. The article published was allegedly based on a survey claiming that 50% of Fijians in the hesitant group fear possible side effects of the vaccine, and it's the reason they will not vaccinate against COVID-19. Corey Tandulala reports the minister says the data provided in the survey was flawed and the article was taken down without correction.
Dr. Ifiremi Wanganembete says such reporting undermines the work being carried out by frontliners.
To see a tweet like that was really disappointing, given that the amount of work that people in the Ministry of Health and also the other government ministers have been doing, and noting that the data being represented was actually flawed, was actually flawed data, and the hesitancy group was only 135 of the 1,047.
The Health Minister says it is important to report on the progressive fact that Fiji's full vaccination rate has surpassed the halfway mark.
Responsible media organizations should be able to look at the data, extrapolate what's important and portray it. And we should be portraying the fact that 95% of our people have been vaccinated once, that 51% of our people have been fully vaccinated, and many are still turning up to be vaccinated.
The minister adds that it is also critical to recognize the sacrifices made by many frontliners who have been away from their families for months by reporting on the latest vaccination information. Attempts to get a comment from Radio New Zealand regarding the article remains unsuccessful. Corey Tandulala, FBC News.
The Ministry of Fisheries is aware of a group of people from Ba and Tavua illegally harvesting sea cucumber from taboo fishing grounds in Bulitavu. Director Fisheries Neomai Ravitu says they are conducting a fact-finding mission and will soon be launching a monitoring operation in hopes of curtailing this activity. Kelly Vadala reports.
Some areas in the Western Division are now under the spotlight for the illegal activity as the sea cucumber ban is still in effect.
Particularly, there's a group of the fishers. They're traveling all the way up to Bulitavu area, and they're coming from Ba and Tavua. These are the ones that we're concerned about.
The Fisheries Ministry confirms it recently confiscated tons of sea cucumber this week.
To refrain from any, alleged illegal harvests of this particular commodity, because we're still under the current the ban that's still in existence.
Turangani Koro o Fudi Vanua Verata, Level Timbua says early Tuesday morning villagers caught a group of men fishing and harvesting sea cucumbers.
I was alerted to the two boats and we decided to go after them. They came all the way from Ba. They were diving for sea cucumbers during curfew hours and in our protected fishing ground. We contacted police once we caught them, but it looks like they were camping on an empty island and collecting their catch there.
There are fixed notices that will be issued by the ministry for such activity. Companies caught in the illegal act will be fined a maximum $20,000 and individuals $10,000. Kelly Vadala, FBC News.
Police have revealed that young people between the ages of 17 to 25 are more likely to commit suicide than adults. The Ministry of Health's wellness statistics highlighted that geographically, the majority of cases are recorded from the Western and Northern divisions. Christiana Uluwai reports that 200,000 people in the Western Pacific region die from suicide each year.
Fiji has an average suicide cases of 103 per year and 113 attempted suicide cases.
We know that males have twice the risk of completing suicides than females. We know that Fijians of Indian descent traditionally have the highest risk factors for suicide.
Medicine Aduba, who lost her daughter to suicide 19 years ago, says the pain remains for life.
The impact of untimely death will never go away. It doesn't. The what ifs and so on stays with us.
Stakeholders are encouraging Fijians to make time for their loved ones before it's too late.
We must have hope, and we must aim to empower people with confidence. Check in and check out on your loved ones. Tell them that they matter and let them know that you care.
Last year, the Fiji Police Force recorded 94 suicide and 108 attempted suicide cases. Christiana Uluwai, FBC News.
And later in sports, FNRL opts to end its season early.
Welcome back. One of the largest tour companies in Fiji, Rosie Holidays, believes that the opening the borders later this month will not mean that tourists will be rushing into the country. However, Managing Director Tony Whitten says international travelers will need to be given confidence in terms of coming for a holiday. Felipe Naikaso has more.
Local tourism expert Tony Whitten says apart from vaccination, teamwork will be crucial in trying to revive the industry.
We have to make sure that we remove as many barriers as possible to make it really easy for these international visitors to safely return to Fiji and to ensure that we apply common sense.
Whitten also believes that the mandatory quarantine will need to be eased out if we are to have tourists. However, there still may be strict protocols in place to ensure people are safe.
One of the key requirements is you have to be fully vaccinated. There may be some tests required prior to your departure. There may be some rapid tests happening here. But it's it's managed risk.
Resorts around the country have also been doing the marketing.
Our Australian team in Australia is working very hard with our international global sales team to our partners, business partner, for them to get the awareness out.
Tourism stakeholders have been for the past few weeks having virtual meetings with the Prime Minister, Minister for Tourism and the Ministry of Health. Felipe Naikaso, FBC News.
Fiji's tourism earnings noted a decline of 59.5% over the June quarter of last year. The Fiji Bureau of Statistics says the earnings for the quarter stood at $1.7 million. The Bureau says for this year's June quarter earnings was 39.3% or $1.1 million lower than the amount recorded for the March quarter of 2021. Changes were seen in the major markets compared to the June 2020 quarter. Earnings from Australia went down by 20% or $0.1 to $0.4 million, contributing 23.5% to the total. New Zealand was down by 100%, while the United States of America was up by 50%, contributing 17.6% to the total. The statistics also revealed China went down by 60%, contributing only $0.2 million to the total. Here, the local exchange rates are set early this morning. The Fiji dollar gained against the US greenback, Aussie and Kiwi dollars as well as the euro, but lost ground against the other international currencies we cover. On the commodities market, crude oil dropped to $68 a barrel, gold rose to close at $1,797 per ounce, and silver was up at $24.09 per ounce. And we now join Sharon from HFC Bank to give us the latest figures from the money market.
Good evening. The Kiwi dollar was in action in the early hours of trade today. Numbers released for New Zealand showed their electronic card retail sales dropped by 19.8% in August. Lockdown measures introduced in the second half of the month led to reduced spending. The US dollar dipped as Treasury yields fell after the US government saw strong demand for a sale of 30-year bonds. Also, their data released showed the number of Americans filing new claims for jobless benefits fell last week to the lowest level in nearly 18 months. This offered more evidence that job growth was being hindered by labor shortages rather than cooling demand for workers. And in the most awaited event for the week, the European Central Bank kept its monetary policy unchanged. However, it will trim emergency bond purchases over the coming quarter. The ECB upgraded its growth forecast for this year to 5% from a previous 4.6% target and raised inflation expectations. The inflation is now seen at 2.2% this year, falling to 1.7% next year, which is well below the ECB's 2% target range. And that's all from your HFC Bank for this week. Thanks for joining in.
The Ministry of Lands and Mineral Resources continues to execute innovative strategies to ease the means of doing business and improve customer service. The online MyLease Info service was launched this morning by Minister Chone Sumate that will benefit more than 18,000 leases of state-owned land. Details with Josiah Nunga.
Another new chapter for the Lands Ministry as it strives to effectively and efficiently streamline its lease services.
They'll be able to view their latest 8 financial transactions online. This enhances better monitoring of the transaction while referencing their receipts. Third, to view their latest lease statement invoice online.
The ministry is urging its lessees to take advantage of this online service by visiting the Lands Department website and register in order to get the username and password and to be able to view their lease information.
Anticipated these initiatives essentially mean that we improve the ease of doing business in Fiji, which is what all governments in the world are trying to do in the new normal.
This will also ensure the proper documentation of leased land, as 3% of land in Fiji is state-owned.
This leasing administration includes processing of applications, issuing of leases, monitoring the conditions of those leases to ensure these conditions are maintained.
The platform will also assist lessees track the progress of the applications online. Josiah Nunga, FBC News.
That is the latest from my end, but coming up after the break, climate change bill labeled a disability inclusive intervention. Stay with us.
Welcome back. The Pacific Disability Forum has acknowledged the work carried out by the government in terms of climate change at an international level. Regional Coordinator Climate Change Sainimili Tawake says the climate change bill is a genuine item to end the climate war by locking in a bipartisan and national action on climate change. Tawake has welcomed the disability inclusive intervention in the climate change bill. About 113,595 people in Fiji have a disability, which is in the proximity of the World Health Organization's estimate of 15% of the population.
The notion of twin track approach in addressing the vulnerability of persons with disabilities through resilience building tackles a whole host of other development issues in enabling climate change adaptation to occur.
A group of Nanrunga Navosai youth who met on Twitter in June has assisted over 200 needy families in their province during these trying times. The Hawai Gang, made up of 32 young people, aspire to support struggling families in the province until COVID-19 has passed. Apenisa Wangenadovu reports.
This group of young people reinvented the tradition of Sosolevaki, where they assist the people of Watulele.
Then we started off with a virtual concert, and we got me and a few other artists like Lessa, Rosie T.Y. from Sydney. So we all got on board and fundraised and raised a little over $5,000 and started with a second project.
Local artist Navoka says they are also able to assist local businesses.
We were like, let's try and help within the province, so we could help the small businesses, we could help the Nanrunga people back at home.
Navoka says reactions from people who have been assisted in the past have motivated them to continue with the support.
You know, I guess you're on your own bubble, you're okay, but then when you do these kind of things and you take it to deliver on the ground, then you realize how some people really need it. You walk in, I mean, I'm not saying it in a bad way, but you walk in and you see the conditions of the house and the person in there that's receiving the item, you just know that they're very grateful because of the tears and the constant like, you know that they're really grateful. And that's kind of like gives us the purpose of what we're doing.
The Hawai Gang aim to raise $20,000 before they wrap up this year, and they are already planning to invest in other projects post-COVID-19. Apenisa Wangenadovu, FBC News.
In Q&A tonight, Ritika Pratap speaks with a senior economics officer at the Asian Development Bank on how COVID-19 has affected poverty levels.
ADB has recently done a report for Pacific on poverty. How has COVID-19 affected poverty levels in the region?
ADB estimates that around 75 million to 80 million in the whole Asia Pacific region. They've been pushed to below poverty levels. But in terms of Fiji alone, just before the COVID-19 pandemic, poverty rate Fiji was around 29.9%. That was released by the stats office here in Fiji. So that basically means that around 258,000 people in Fiji falls below the poverty line.
When you say this was done before the pandemic, are you talking about the second wave or the first wave?
It was done before the first wave. I think the Bureau of Statistics released this household and expenditure survey around. It was based. The coverage was based just before the pandemic.
Can you describe the ripple effects that COVID-19 has caused on the economy and as a result on the poverty rate?
So I would classify the impact in terms of COVID-19 on poverty numbers maybe in two ways. One is a direct impact because now there's no more term coming in. So that's a direct response measures. We come up in Fiji, we have lockdowns as well. So this is also likely poverty.
And to sports now with Jamie.
Vinaka, and good evening. Up ahead, and basketball eager for new season. This and more coming up. Fijiana's Sevens coach Sayasi Fuli is keen to share his knowledge on elevating female participation and developing core skills with other sports. Many sporting organizations have taken inspiration from the Fijiana's success at the Tokyo Olympics and are eager to draw lessons from the Fijiana journey to better advance athletes in their respective sports. Talia Materkula reports.
Touch rugby is amongst the list of sports hoping to pick from Fuli's brain.
Having some discussions with Fuli, we wanted to pick his brains to try and guide us along, especially with our women. We need a lot of attention towards our women to be competitive at level.
Fuli says he is willing to share his secrets.
Provide them some advice on setting up the program, involving women, how you create that right environment, and manage their time, manage how they stay in camp, and that same philosophy they will take into competition.
The Fijiana coach plans for a collaboration with Touch Rugby to engage in cross-sports participation to improve women's skills and knowledge. Tali Materakula, FBC Sports.
Flying Fijians utility Josh Matavesi has left Bath Rugby for a lucrative deal with Japanese club Toyota Shoki Shuttles. The 30-year-old was allowed an early release from his contract with Bath for a deal he says will help set up his family for when he retires from rugby. Matavesi adds he is extremely thankful to Bath Rugby for allowing him to take up a life-changing opportunity in Japan. Joining Bath in January 2020, Matavesi featured 27 times in the blue, black and white and had his sights on adding to the total before the chance with the Shuttles came up. Matavesi says it was a tough decision to make, but he saw it was a good opportunity to secure his future. The Fiji National Rugby League has been left with no option but to try and conclude the 2021 season with a nines competition. With the remaining 3 months of the year being too little time to host a full season, the FNRL is working towards fulfilling the return-to-play framework set out by the Ministry of Sports and getting its players back on the field before the new year. Karolani Tavi reports.
The COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted a lot of sporting events planned for this year, including FNRL's competitions.
I know that I think having a full season this year is an untenable option for the league, and therefore we have lined up a few high-performance activities with off-season events. So we're currently looking at a nines tournament towards the end of the year. Options do they have that will allow a national test window, given that now the
Fiji Bati coach Joe Rabele says preparation for the Rugby League World Cup continue as normal.
Preparation and all the things that we prepared for this year World Cup, it's already been done. So we just try to work from where we left off.
Basketball Fiji is excited to continue its season soon after the launch of the resumption of sports and recreation activities framework. Despite missing out on much of its events planned for the year, Basketball Fiji hopes to quickly get all boxes ticked so its players can safely return to the courts. Venina Rakautonga reports.
Basketball Fiji will continue to ensure proper guidelines are followed.
Important that we're able to work together and run an event in accordance to the government's health guidelines and measures.
Basketball Fiji Chief Operating Officer Laisiasa Puamau says, as reminded by the Sports Commission, they will take responsibility once the green light is given.
The programs or competitions that we'll be hoping to run once things get back to normal will all be dependent on our guidelines on the safe return to the sport of basketball.
Fiji Sports Commission Chair Peter Mazie says the final check will be done by respective stakeholders.
For all the NSOs, clubs, associations will be done by the Sports Commission. The checks for the sports facilities, indoor gymnasiums, public and private and swimming pools will be done by Fiji Sports Council.
The three levels are play safe stage, open up stage and good to go level, where full sporting activities will resume. Venina Rakautonga, FBC Sports.
Novak Djokovic is on track to winning his fourth Grand Slam title this year. Now in Player of the Day, Canadian teenager Leylah Fernandez shocked another high-ranked opponent in second seed Aryna Sabalenka to reach the US Open final. In our quirky Sport of the Day, modern pentathlon. Inspired by the traditional pentathlon held during the ancient Olympics, the sport comprises of 5 different events: fencing, show jumping, pistol shooting, and crossroad running. That's it from Sports Tonight. Coming up in Weird and Wonderful, a look at the majestic Northern Lights. This and more after the break.
at the weather today. A weak trough of low pressure continues to affect the Fiji group, bringing with it cloudy periods and occasional rain. Now to the west, cloudy periods with brief showers. Eastwards from Peck Harbour to Suva, it was a cloudy and rainy day. In the north, fine apart from isolated afternoon or evening showers. Places we will be checking out are Lautoka, Suva and Lambasa. Suva recorded the highest humidity levels at 85%. At sea, southeast winds 20 to 25 knots, rough seas. Turning to tides, low tide was at 2:47 p.m. with the next high tide at 9:03 p.m. Sunrise is at 6:06. For tomorrow, more rain can be expected for parts of the larger islands. The outlook for Sunday: cloudy periods with some showers and isolated afternoon or evening thunderstorms over the eastern parts and interior of the larger islands and nearby smaller islands, Condemns, Lau and Lomaiviti group. Our shot of the day: this spectacular shot of the Lautoka sunset was taken by Ashmeet. That's the weather for now, and it's back to Edwin.
In Fijian Pulse, we ask, do you think the worst of the COVID-19 pandemic is over in the Western and Central divisions?
I personally believe COVID will be over soon.
Both area, the COVID cases are going down.
The case has been dropping for both divisions, so I think it will be over soon.
And recapping our main stories, Bulitavu hails court ruling, council advises against exaggeration of USP ranking, and ministry at the advanced planning stage for vaccinating children. For these stories and others, tune in daily to our sister radio station Gold FM. And to our poll question this week, we are asking, will you get vaccinated when vaccines become available for those between 12 and 17 years? Visit our FBC News website to take part. And send us newsworthy pictures and videos, fbcnews@fbc.com.fj, or share it with us via social media. You can also download our FBC app to keep updated with the very latest in news and sports, and listen to our 6 radio stations live. That's your news this evening. I'll see you again next week. Until then, stay safe. Modemanda.